Now, like I said, folks, the next part of our reading is going to be getting into these divine forces of the lunar nakshatras, as portrayed in the Vedas. This is giving us a more of a classical Vedic look on each of the deities. More times than not, the deities that are described in the Nakshatra Sutras of the Taittiriya Brahmana are going to come from earlier Vedic literature and texts. There isn't any god conveyed in the Taittiriya Brahmana that hasn't already been mentioned in the older ancient Vedas. So this next section is a longer section of our story here. For those who are interested in getting a little bit of Vedic literature and lore, that is what we're about today. Now, just as a quick reference point here for all of us, this is a summary of the nakshatra devatas. And we see that the devatas of the nakshatras are split up into 3 main groups, plus 4 sort of sidereal, extra groupings that are just their own thing. Brahaspati is the nature of the sage. Prajalpati is basically Brahma. And that's Rohini. I was trying to look for that at the beginning of the video. Vishvadevas is their own thing. But the Adityas, Rudras, and Vasus resonate with, if you've ever heard the classic Gayatri mantra, Om Boom Bhuva Svaha Tat Savitur Varenyam. Those first 3 words outside of Om, Bhum, Bhuva, and Svaha relate with the 3 primary worlds, shall we say, in Vedic literature. There's Bhum, which is the earth. There's Bhuva, which is the atmosphere. And then there's Svaha, which is heaven. And they all resonate with different parts of cosmology. So of these 3, we can see here that the Adityas relate with Svaha. They relate with the deities. The Vasus are kind of like the earth. The Rudras is the atmosphere and the passions of Rajas. And then the Adityas will sort of relate more to Sattva and to these deities. And Tvastri, who is the lord of Chitra, is considered to be one of the Adityas, one of these deities. And this is what we're going to be digging into when we get into the Vedic story of Chitra and Tvastri, which is its god, its deity. So let's start digging in. Our first quote comes from the most ancient source, the Rig Veda, Book 10. It's Mandala 10. Mandala 10, chapter 53, verse 9. He, Tvastri, sharpens his parasu, his axe of good iron, wherewith the radiant preceptor cuts, hews, and gives the fine finish. So it's like in the olden days, there would be somebody who's got the big axe that let's just chop wood for the sake of chopping wood. Tvastri was somebody who had a very fine, good iron axe, who would make it with a very fine edge, so he could cut minuscule little cuts and details. If you've ever seen a woodworker, they get into the very minusculest details, and you have to have a sharp blade in order to do that. His good axe of good iron cuts to make these finite cuts. This says something about the perception, the clarity that's needed for Chitra to operate at its best. So let's learn a bit more about this axe of good iron, which is called Tvastri's parasu. Comprised of the single brilliant star Spica, Spica was a very important star in ancient times because it was aligned with the autumn equinox point for a long time, 2,000 years ago. It's not anymore, according to Tropical Vedic astrology theory. But I digress. Comprised of the single brilliant star Spica, the nakshatra Chitra denotes an object of extraordinary beauty or brilliant coloring that is striking to the eye. Hence, the ancient scriptures affectionately refer to Chitra as Goddess Chitra, the bringer of beauty. And that comes from, I'm going to have to go occasionally and look at the references. NPA is the Nakshatra Kalpaha Parsista. So that book, amongst others, typically calls Chitra the bringer of beauty. Chitra dazzles in the darkness of the night, while in the light of day, the whole world marvels at the manifold creations produced by its ruler Tvastri. This divine artisan of the universe is known also as Vishvarupa, the maker of all forms, as well as Chitra Visitra, the multiform. Tvastri's most touted feature is his skillful hands, evident by the epithets Supani, it's the dexterous-handed one, and Sukrit Supani, the able artificer. Unlike Savitri, Hasta, who is a god also noted for his hands, Tvastri employs instruments of trade, particularly his parasu, an iron axe designed for cutting and shaping wood. He, Tvastri, sharpens his parasu, wherewith the radiant preceptor cuts, hews, and gives the fine finish. Again, that's the same quote as above from the Rig Veda. So Tvastri is more about using instruments and tools and fine tools to create fine imprints and changes. So with his parasu, Tvastri crafts Indra's weapon, the thunderbolt, Vajra. And this comes from the Rig Veda. When Tvastar, deft of hand, made a golden thunderbolt of 1,000 edges, which he fashioned skillfully, Indra received it to perform his heroic deeds. Indra, of course, has a thunderbolt because Indra relates with Zeus as the soul. And this is the actual Vedic Indra in the Vedic literature. The character who has the thunderbolt and uses it to destroy the bad guys. The work remembered by all the gods is Tvastri's wood oblation bowl, the kamasa, the sacrificial soma vessel. From the day it is engineered, the Vishvadevas use this bowl to partake of the soma draft in the classic Soma Yagna ceremony, which this book, as we might read, conveys the deepest truths held within the Vedic tradition. You know, in Vedic tradition, the mantras are very important, but they also had ceremonies, particularly the Soma Yagna. There's a type of sacrifice that involved the drinking of soma and the sacrificing of animals and plants in order to, and there's mantras and things that are all said that contain the deity information of all the gods found in the nakshatras. Now, during the Puranic era, which is much later, Tvastri shares his Vedic title as maker of all forms with Vishvakarman, described in the Mahabharata as the originator of 1,000 arts. the engineer of the immortals, the maker of all kinds of ornaments, and the first of artists. In this same scripture, Tvastri is called the celestial artificer and the fashioner of Indra's Vajra, his thunderbolt. So intimately associated with art and worship are these two devatas that at times they seem to be one and the same. This explains Vishvakarman's designation as ruler of Chitra by certain Jyotisha Shastra, including the Jyotisha Siddhanta Sara. So this is going to say that, Vishvakarma has a different name. Some say they're the same. Him and Tvastri are the same person. That's generally what's understood. Vishvakarman is the incarnation of Tvastri in the later Puranic literature. So whether Tvastri is the same as Vishvakarman, or he's merely fashioned in his likeness, the celebration of Vishvakarman, Jayanti, provides insight into the nature of Chitra. During this Hindu festival, artists and craftsmen pay respect to Vishvakarman by honoring the tools of their trades. The carpenter honors his chisel, the weaver honors his loom, and the potter his pottery wheel. Indeed, the entire engineering and architectural community pay tribute to Vishvakarman on this day. Cool. Now, our next section is going to, the next chapter is entitled The Wives of the Gods. Curious how this is going to go down. We read that Tvastri's beautiful creations are admired by all, yet none surpass the brilliant forms of the gods fashioned by this artisan. For example, Tvastri gave form to the celestial parents, heaven and earth. And we read, this is from VMS, which is, let me see here. So this is Vajrasenai Madhyandina Samhita, which says, Hotar, more skilled in sacrifice, bring hither with speed today God Tvastar, thou who knowest, even him who framed these two, the heaven and the earth. So that's basically saying that Tvastri actually engineered everything. It's engineered the heaven and the earth. Om, the Swasth, the Swaha, Boom, Buha, Bhum, Bhuva, Swaha, the whole 9 yards. There is an intrinsic beingness in these things, which we call the work of Tvastri. Now, of the Vishvadevas, Indra is beneficiary of Tvastri's most magnificent creation, for he designs Indra's exquisite form and gives to him his manly power, Indriya Virya. For gracing all the gods with perfect form, Tvastri is befriended by their wives, his closest Rig Vedic associates. Tvastri is also credited in moral creations. We hear a quote from the Rig Veda that says, May Vishnu form and mold the womb. May Tvastar duly shape the form. Prajapati infuse the stream, and Dhatar lay the germ for thee. It's a Rig Veda Mandala 10. In this stanza that we just read, the role of each god is aligned with his particular Shakti, or power. For example, Vishnu the god who apportions Akasha, creates space in the womb for the fetus to form. Prajapati, the first god to have procreated, provides the seed. And Datri, the establisher, unites the seed with the egg. Then Tvastri transforms the embryo into the shape of a child. Indeed, the sages of the Rig Veda laud Tvastri, for even in the womb he shapes all forms. That again comes from Rig Veda Mandala 10. Now, the stellar symbol of Chitra is a pearl, as we've talked about. The germination of a pearl begins when an outside irritant invades the shell of the oyster. From this irritant, a gem of great beauty and worth is produced. Similarly, the female egg is fertilized when an outside irritant, a single sperm, successfully invades its membrane. Then the egg is fashioned by Tvastri into a unique being of flawless beauty and immeasurable value. Cool. For his precision in the perfect work that results, couples desirous of offspring make sacrificial offerings to this most skillful of artificers. Aptly, Tvastri's sacrificial wish is for splendid offspring. And this comes from another part of the Taittiriya Brahmana. Tvastar declared, "May I obtain an offspring that would be a thing of brightness, a marvel." He offered that well-known sacrificial cake, served on 8 potsherds, to Tvastar, meaning to himself, and to Chitra, the bright one, who is his nakshatra. Consequently, he obtained an offspring that was a thing of brightness. He indeed obtains an offspring that is a thing of brightness, who offers that oblation and who thus knows it. So on this occasion, after the chief oblation, Tvastri offers the additional, so the person doing the sacrifice will offer the additional oblations, saying to Tvastar, Svaha, to Chitra, the bright one, Svaha, to brightness, Svaha, and to offspring, Svaha. This goes to show that each of the nakshatra sutras holds a deity which resonates with a certain aspect of life. And people would do, during the Somayagna ceremony or any type of sacrifice, where sacrifices are made to the gods in order to get results that are desired, they would have to pray and offer oblations to the certain god related to the certain thing that they're seeking. Tvastri and Tvastar, same word, is essentially invoking the creative spirit that allows for a beautiful and perfect thing to be created, whether it's a child or any bigger architectural dream. So Tvastri is invoked during sacrificial ceremonies relating to progeny, such as the Patni Samyajas. It's the offering to the wives of the gods. On this occasion, a couple hoping for offspring invoke Soma to pour the seed, Tvastri to transform the seed into a child, and the wives of the gods to protect the fetus during the pregnancy. Tvastri's unique association with wives, both divine and mortal, earns him the priestly title Nestri, a sacrificial title reserved for the priest who instructs and leads the Yajamana's wife during the ceremonial yagnas. Now, by the time of the Brahmanas, including the Taittiriya Brahmana, Tvastri joins the ranks of other devatas who are eulogized for conception, such as Prajapati, Agni, and Soma. So Tvastri becomes a part of the eulogy deities who are aligned with providing oblations to those who have died. Here, Tvastri, the spermatic, as the word is used in the Taittiriya Brahmana, Tvastri, the spermatic and multiform impregnator, is beseeched to liberally let loose that seminal fluid that causes the offspring to thrive, from whence a hero will be born, a hero skillful in work and very able, and who will love the gods. So this is the oblation made to those who have died, or who to have died, in order they will be reborn in this way. Another part of the Brahmana, the commentary of the Nakshatra Sutras, the Taittiriya Brahmana says, "Let the Hotar worship Tvastar, the firm one, the wise one, the impregnator, the renowned one, the bestower of glory, the multiform one who does not disappoint desires. May he be well thriving by prosperity and rich in manly sons." Very interesting. So next we have the slaying of Vishvarupa Tvastra. And this is our next chapter in our reading here. Right? The Rig Veda contains the germ of a story that explodes in significance in later Vedas and Brahmanas. It recounts the killing of Tvastri's son, Vishvarupa Tvastra, by Indra and his ally, Trita. You have to excuse me, I'm just going to write something down real quick. Okay. So the Rig Veda contains a germ of the story that explodes in significance in the later Vedas and Brahmanas. It recounts the killing. Ah, yes, so I've heard this. Vic Dakara talks about this in his book too. This story recounts the killing of Tvastri's son, Vishvarupa Tvastra, by Indra and his ally Trita. So Indra kills Vishvakarma's son, Tvastri's son. The legend is significant on several fronts. Firstly, it sets up an antagonistic relationship between Indra and Tvastri, who are brothers, brother Adityas. Of course, all of the Adityas are born by I should know the name. Aditi. The Adityas are the sons of Aditi, who is the great mother of all. So all of the Adityas are considered brothers, including Indra and Tvastri. Now, there is an antagonistic relationship between Indra and Tvastri, as we see here. More critically, this explains the creation of the formidable demon, Vritra. Now, reflecting his father's faculty of producing multiform creations, Vishvarupa Tvastra is born with 3 heads, 7 tongues, and 6 eyes. So Vishvarupa Tvastra is Tvastri's son. This divine priest of the gods consumes soma with one of those heads, liquor with the other, and sundry food with the third. Justification for his tragic death is told in a Rig Vedic Sukta dedicated to Indra. And this comes from the Rig Veda, Mandala 10. It reads, Lord of the brave, Indra cleft him in pieces. He smote his 3 heads from his body, seizing the cattle of the omniform son of Tvastar. According to this stanza, Vishvarupa is seemingly murdered for stealing cattle. In light of the familial bond between Indra and Tvastri, such extreme retribution begs for deeper investigation. Let's recall that Indra befriends Tvastri, for the celestial artisan fashions him a perfect physical form and imbues it with manly courage. That's Indriya Virya. Tvastri also crafts Indra's 1,000-edged thunderbolt, a weapon that earns Indra lasting name and fame. And then there is the Soma bowl, most precious of all to Indra, for even as a babe, this monarch of the gods, Indra, is dependent on its sweet nectar. For this ingenious invention, Tvastri a priori deserves special privileges. He's a very important part of all things Veda by being the creator of this bowl that Indra uses, as well as Indra's thunderbolt. This character really did a lot for Indra. Now, first, Tvastri is granted guardianship of the bowl and soma, which is safe kept at his home. When in need of the draft, Indra must pay Tvastri a visit. In Tvastar's dwelling, Indra drank the soma, 100 worth of juice pressed from the mortar, of the precious soma juice. That comes from the Rig Veda. Now, needless to say, it behooves Indra to remain in good standing with this god, Tvastri. Yet Indra is rarely constrained by rules of etiquette, and one day he challenges Tvastri to a brawl. Having won, Indra stole his soma and consumed the lot of it. Thus, previous to the death of Tvastri's son, this brothership already had its problems. Still, such minor trouble and a few stolen cows hardly seem justification for Vishvarupa's death. The Taittiriya Brahmana's version of this legend, coming from the chapter 2 of the Taittiriya Brahmana, makes more apparent its Rig Vedic symbolism. Here the fiasco begins when Vishvarupa, who's the son that Indra kills, enters into a secret pact with the Asuras, whom Indra is always trying to smite. Vishvarupa, which is Tvastri's son, agrees to provide the Asuras with his father's soma bowl along with its contents. Duly concerned that the Asuras will gain immortality with the soma, Indra kills Vishvarupa before the goods are delivered. Tvastri's stolen bowl and his soma is metaphorically represented in the Rig Veda by the stolen milch cows, whose udders are filled with sweet, nourishing milk. Now, furious over the tragic death of his son, Tvastri conducts a Soma Yagna, to which Indra is excluded. Recklessly, he consumes a portion of the Soma, the offering that is typically reserved for Indra. The remainder is cast into the fire, with the spell that a great demon capable of killing Indra will be born. As the Soma unites with the fire, the Asura Vritra, the coverer, rises up from the flames. Extending his form in all directions, Vritra, the original big bad dragon, grows larger by the minute, eventually encompassing all three realms. Fortunately, in his earlier haste to curse Indra, Tvastri inverts the spell. Rather than cursing that a demon shall be born that is capable of destroying Indra, he curses that a demon shall be born whom Indra is capable of destroying. Thus, Indra soon puts an end to Vritra. Pretty big mistake on the part of Mr. Perfect Architect. Interestingly, the Taittiriya Samhita and Taittiriya Brahmana acclaim Indra as the ruler of Chitra, but perhaps such a claim is attributable to Indra's defeat of Vritra, a demon created by Tvastri's witchcraft, or perhaps Indra's victory over the entire entourage of Asuric forces. A victory secured under Chitra earns him those honors. It's interesting to think. I'd say ultimately what we've covered in our video about Chitra Nakshatra, but the way Ernst and Vic describes it is kind of really says it. Essentially that Indra is the soul. So anything that the soul does through its senses is going to be conveyed through Tvastri anyway. So Indra is truly the arbiter of all things, but particularly Chitra, as we've said, is the way for the soul to express itself with sensual acuity and truth. Now, in this tale, the demons are hopeful of overtaking the gods once and for all. They construct within Chitra's stellar space a sacrificial fire altar to serve as a stairway to heaven. Aware of these devious plans, Indra passes himself off as a priest and convinces the Asuras to allow him to place a brick upon their altar. When the altar nearly reaches the heights of heaven, no doubt represented by the brilliant star Chitra, Indra removes his brick, causing the altar to collapse. Converting the fallen bricks into thunderbolts, he then slays each and every demon. Cool. That's an awesome story. So, this next little bit is given in the Shatapatha Brahmana, where it says, "Thereupon the gods assembled and said, 'Wonderfully, Chitram, indeed it has fared with us, who Indra has slain so many enemies.' Hence the wonderful nature Chitratva of the asterism Chitra. And verily wonderfully it fares with him, and he slays his rivals, his spiteful enemy, whoever, knowing this, sets up his fires under Chitra. A kshatriya, therefore, should especially desire to take advantage of this asterism, since such a one is anxious to strike and to vanquish his enemies." Very cool. Now, our next section is a huge section talking about what's called the Ribhu brothers. The Rig Veda mentions several groups of gods or semi-gods, each with unique characteristics and special allegiances. For example, the Rudras are atmospheric devatas who accompany Indra into battle, and the ecstatic singing Rikvans are priestly hosts of Brihaspati, the sage. However, most curious are the Ribhu brothers. These are three priests who received tickets to heaven because of their ingenious inventions. They are the sons of Sudanvan, the skilled archer, and the grandsons of Manu. Most often the three brothers are cited collectively, but at times Ribhu, inventor or one who works with iron, Vibhu, the brilliantly adorned one, and Vaja, treasure or booty. These guys are individually portrayed as the companions of Indra, Varuna, and Vishvadevas, respectively. So these are three priests who receive tickets to heaven because of their ingenious inventions. The Ribhus are pioneers of technology, leading the way in innovative forms of travel, healing, and crafts. They acquire their skill through careful observation and study of the creative ways of the gods, from which they fashion their own versions invested with new vigor and better suited to the times. Their remarkable expertise earns them a seat at the evening Soma libation, as their inventive gifts to the gods far exceed those of other priests. Even Tvastri, the famed universal artisan, fails to receive the praise and glory bestowed upon the Ribhus. For example, Tvastri has no Rig Vedic hymns to his sole dedication, while there are half a dozen dedicated to these Ribhus. Mastering mechanical, hydrodynamic, and electrical engineering, the Ribhus architect new and improved methods of travel, including chariots, ships, and airplanes. Their uniquely designed war vehicles are widely acclaimed by humans and gods alike. And it's said in the Rig Veda, Mandala 4, "O pioneers of aircrafts, we salute you, the possessor of war vehicles, devised by you as a result of teamwork, of a great utility in wartime, fast-moving, highly priced, speedy, and strong, complex in structure, and provided with sensitive and sensible components." With lightning-quick minds, the Ribhu brothers invent a three-wheeled spaceship which speeds through the air absent horses and reins. Cool. I've seen pictures of these. As someone interested in extraterrestrials, is often a common thing that it's mentioned in the Rig Vedas that they had airships and spaceships and stuff like that. And I suppose these guys were the arbiters of such things. Now, the Ashvini Kumaras, recipients of such novel contraption, are seen in the twilight hours ushering Usas, dawn, and Nakta, dusk, on this state-of-the-art spacecraft. Cool. The Ribhus likewise revolutionize farming and agriculture. On the high places, the tops of mountains, ye have made the grass for man and water in the dry valleys by your skill, O men. That's Rig Veda Mandala 1, chapter 161. It seems that the brothers modernize every industry whose crafts have become obsolete. In close to that same mantra, we read, "O spiritual archers, you give fresh youth and newness to the old and traditional." The skillful inventions of the Ribhus go far beyond travel and agriculture. They also miraculously master the art of giving form to living creatures. For example, they fashion for Indra 2 new bay horses, a feat that earns them his lasting respect. When a milch cow dies, leaving behind a calf, the Ribhus form a new one in her place. So miraculous is this particular feat that the milch cow becomes famed as Vishvarupa Ubajata, the dappled cow with multi-forms, and in time she is gifted to Brihaspati. The Ribhus also give new life to their parents who die of old age. They perform their feats in hoping of get a seat at the Soma Yagna, for ultimately the Ribhus yearn only for heaven. But their spectacular invention, their grand finale, is yet to be accomplished. Initially, the gods have gotten themselves into a quandary. In the meantime, they promise the brothers access to the Soma draft in exchange for their marvelous feats. Although the gods take great delight in the Ribhu's many inventions, they never once entertained the thought of delivering on their promise. Thinking themselves more ingenious than the Ribhus, the gods devise a means for reneging on their promise. With Tvastri's full approval, the gods challenge the Ribhus to a feat heretofore only possible by the supreme artisan himself. They demand the Ribhus to craft 3 Soma bowls in addition to the one existing already designed by Tvastri. As for why 3 are chosen, this is kind of left to conjecture. Perhaps one is intended for each brother, so the gods would not have to share their own beloved bowl with mere mortals. Perhaps it serves to provide individual challenges. Most likely the gods reason that with the 3 bowls, they can enjoy some Soma draft morning, noon, and night, and still have a spare bowl should one be broken or stolen. Could just be the numerology of 3. It's conjecture. Now, cheered on by curious bystanders, the Ribhus begin measuring with their scientific tools the Soma bowl fashioned by Tvastri. Never doubting their art or wisdom, the Ribhus produce 3 additional chalices where once there was only one. Such is Tvastri's fate in life. His brainchild, the Soma bowl, comparable in acclaim to Indra's defeat of Vitra. So we're saying that this is Tvastri's fate in life. The Soma bowl was his brainchild, which is comparable in acclaim to Indra's defeat of Vritra, the dragon. His brainchild, the Soma bowl, is first stolen from his own home by his brother Indra, then by his son Vishvarupa. Now mere mortals break its code, replicating the bowl manifold. The unlocking of the Soma bowl's mystery puts an end to Tvastri's outmoded ways. So ultimately, these guys create these bowls. And when this happens, Tvastri is outraged. Let's slay these men who have reviled the chalice, drinking cup of gods. Although threatening to kill the Ribhus, Tvastri knows in his heart that such action would make him no better than Indra, who killed his son for similar reasons. So, as he becomes desperate, Tvastri approaches his most loyal companions, the wives of the gods. Surely he's owed a few favors by these dames. But to Tvastri's chagrin, the divine wives have already welcomed the Ribhus into their tight-knit circle. Now, the Vishva Devas, the gods, are reluctant to make their good on their promise to the brothers. Sensing the hesitation, the Ribhus journey to Savitri's home where they are welcomed as guests for a period of 12 days. At the end of their stay, Savitri grants the Ribhus immortality. When the Ribhus return, they are lauded by priests and gods alike and granted seats at the evening Soma libation. The Nivid, the instruction verse, inserted before the last verse of the Ribhu's hymn during the evening Soma libation, is as follows. May the divine Ribhus enjoy the Soma, who are busy and clever, who are skillful with their hands, very rich and full of bliss, full of strength, who cut the cow which moves everywhere and has all forms, who cut the cow that she became of all forms, who yoked the 2 yellow horses of Indra, who went to the gods, who, when eating, got aware of the girls, the wise of the god, who entered by their skill upon their share in the sacrifice in the year. May the divine Ribhus hear us and enjoy the Soma. Eventually, Prajapati approaches Savitri Hasta. These are thy pupils, thou alone amongst the Vishvadevas, therefore you shalt drink with them. Savitar consents with the condition that Prajapati also drink alongside them. And so the Ribhus, flanked by Savitri and Prajapati, are granted seats alongside the gods at the evening Soma libation. From this day forward, there is renewed hope amongst honorable priests and law-abiding citizens that, through wisdom and sacrificial skill, they too one day will be seated next to the gods. Kind of showing how, through the artisanship, through the beauty, mankind, it's interesting that this is happening in Chitra Nakshatra, because Chitra represents the honesty, the acuity of the senses that would create perfect form in material reality. It's interesting that these humans, the Ribhu brothers, came into perfection and came in to be sitting at the libation of the Soma amongst all the gods in perfection. The perfection happens through the story of Tvastri and this artisanship in Chitra. You know, perfection in our material lives, honesty that provides the rightness and truth that brings about satyam, about goodness and form, is what all humans are applying themselves to. And it can happen for us as it is given in this story. It's kind of lovely. Well, we have one more reading. Damn, that was important. Well, folks, we have one reading left to go through here. This is coming from the divine forces of the lunar nakshatras, as portrayed in the Vedas. This is by this author, Radha. She's a great, very meticulous, detailed researcher on all things Vedic, and she does a great job of portraying how the character of the deity resonates with a native who has, especially the Lagna or the moon falling in this nakshatra. But somebody can also have the Lagna Lord. That's the rising sign. If you have your rising sign, the Lord of the rising sign, or the moon falling into this nakshatra, it is going to convey a lot of your energy. But it also describes how any planet can kind of fall into this nakshatra and have its quality come through the nature of Chitra Nakshatra. So this is the Chitra Nakshatra native. What we read is, and I should say before we start that this author is a sidereal practitioner. She is somebody who thinks that the signs are tied in with the nakshatras. So it's good for us to keep this in mind, that we have to be aware of the bias that she might describe and express in her descriptions of Chitra Nakshatra, Because as I often say, in today's time, it's important for us to be discerning about the sources of our information that come from Vedic era literature, because much of it has been distorted, as we've talked about in the beginning of this series. So let's listen and digest with pertinence what we read about the character of Chitra Nakshatra from this author. Now we read, ruled by the celestial architect of the universe, Chitra gives birth to architects, engineers, craftsmen, and artists, and inclines its native towards inspired and innovative forms of workmanship. If Chitra is not the rising sign or moon nakshatra, then you can look to the nature of the planet in Chitra to determine more precisely its channel of expression. For example, if the second bhava bhavesha, which is a cool word, so for our sake, a bhava is a house, so bhavesha is the house lord. So this is the planet that rules a certain house. For example, if the second house lord falls into Chitra, the second house we know relates with clothes and accessories. So if the second house lord falls into Chitra, this person may be a gifted clothing designer, famous makeover artist, a jewelry designer, etc. You know, the example we've been giving is, let's say, for example, if this is Cancer rising, if we have the sun as the second lord, right? Leo rules the second house for Cancer. So if the sun falls into Chitra, then we're going to have somebody who could be a famous makeover artist, a jewelry designer, because, oh, and also a gifted clothing designer, because all these things have to do with the face and the second house. Somebody with the 12th lord. The 12th house relates to the feet. So if the 12th lord is in Chitra, this could suggest a dancer who choreographs their own very original, deeply thought out dance routines. Or it could also be a designer of an exclusive line of footwear. Again, for the example, we have Cancer rising here. Mercury rules the 12th house. Mercury rules Gemini, which is the 12th sign from Cancer. So if you're a Cancer rising and you have Mercury in Chitra, you might find yourself dealing with things related to the feet, being a shoe designer or a dancer. If we have the third bhava bhavesha, which is trades and crafts, which would, in the case of, again, for Cancer, Mercury rules the 12th house and the 3rd house. So Mercury would be, so if we're Cancer rising and Mercury is in Chitra, not only there would be a theme of dancing and feet, but there would also be the 3rd house resonating, which has to do with trade crafts. So you can look to proficiencies in trades, such as woodworking, especially related to using an axe, an artisan's craft, metal crafting, pottery making, artisanship of a very hands-on material manipulating reality and variety. Third house is like us getting our hands dirty into something in the material world. So this goes to show that any house lord can fall into Chitra and have this quality and this narrative as a part of it. Now, whatever the manner of expression, you can expect an original object designed with meticulous attention to detail, structure, and color. Truly, Chitra is one of the most innovative and exacting of the 27 nakshatras. Now, let the native be forewarned by the story of Tvastri's inventions, which can become outdated by... There's a story that we've talked about where the Ribhus were these brothers who took the work of the original work of Tvastri, the deity of Chitra, and improved it, saw the essence of where it could go, and took it even further and kind of stole the idea. You know, this is almost like Nikola Tesla is like a Chitra guy, and what's that guy's name? Edison, Thomas Edison, took a lot of his ideas and went further with it and kind of called them his own ideas. So Tvastri has to be kind of aware of this sort of thing. When it comes to Chitra Nakshatra, any planets there might be an important narrative relating to staying on top of new and improved modes of artistry. Because if not, it might ultimately be the result in your undoing. The Chitra native is also well advised to safeguard their inventions, lest family members or competitors rip off their designs or infringe upon patents. Now, one prime example of the meticulously structured yet vastly original and innovative energy of Chitra is a pop art icon named Peter Max, who had Chitra Lagnasha. You know, I can't use this example because this person, so the girl, we know Radha is trying to use an example to talk about this nakshatra, but the example she's using is based on the Lagna Lord of this person, Peter Max. But the Lagna Lord, this might not necessarily be the case because she's a sidereal practitioner. So I'm going to skip this thing. And we're going to move towards a better example that she gives with Buzz Aldrin, who had the moon in Chitra, right? Whether you're tropical or sidereal, the moon is in Chitra either way. So Buzz Aldrin had the moon in Chitra. And this is an illustrious example of Chitra's technical and exacting nature. Buzz Aldrin earned a doctorate in astronautics at MIT, and he specialized in the science of spacecraft rendezvous, a field that requires minute and meticulous precision. Aldrin is famous as the second astronaut to step on the face of the moon, right behind Neil Armstrong. Now, the character of Tvastri, who's the deity of Chitra, was the father to 10 daughters and close friends with the wives of the gods. Tvastri is very frequently seen with women. So the native of Chitra Nakshatra might father daughters or be inclined towards female companionship. Tvastri's reputation as the multiform impregnator and fashioner of the embryo within the womb impels this native possibly towards fields involving pregnancy or maternity-related professions. This could be anything from a doctor to a gynecologist to a doula, to the person that watches children and is a part of the home birth process. A very important thing in today's time, in my opinion. Dependent upon other chart indicators, the Chitra Nakshatra native might be a childbirth educator, a doula, there you go, a prenatal fitness instructor, or involved in a career that closely works with expectant mothers. If the chart suggests a more scientific bent, perhaps the native takes an interest in the reproductive sciences, be it embryology, andrology, the field of male reproduction, and so on. Now, in the story of Tvastri, again, Tvastri's only son, Vishvarupa, was nothing but trouble. So, for someone, especially with the moon or Lagna in Chitra Nakshatra, Keep in mind that the native may struggle to maintain harmonious relationships with one or more of his sons. Or perhaps the reputation of this person, the Chitra person, is jeopardized by his son's actions. In light of the relationship between Tvastri and Indra, there might be some brotherly rivalry that might exist as a core dynamic of the family unit, whether that is the sons who are brothers of the Chitra Nakshatra native, or whether it's the Chitra native with his own brothers. There might be rivalry and that kind of thing going on there. So, there's a lot of very specific things being spoken of here in relation to the story of Tvastri in the Vedas, which is often how this author operates. Sometimes I think it's not in keeping with the character. I don't think that everybody with the moon in Chitra Nakshatra is going to struggle with their child or is going to have a fight with their brother. But I am not, I'm reading the data here. This is a woman who has spent more time on this than I have. So we have to keep that in mind, and that's why we're reading it on my channel here. So respect to Radha for her thoughts and ideas here. I hope that everybody has enjoyed this session, this live stream. Like I said, I've been using StreamYard, which is kind of a new thing. So it allows me to kind of throw on some cool different stuff on here, which is pretty sweet. I've enjoyed doing this with everybody. I've had some people hanging out with me throughout the whole live stream. Thank you very much for being a part of it. I'm Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. Keep your eyes peeled. We've got more stuff coming along the way. This is just one of my many nakshatra videos. If you stay tuned, we're going to be doing more rising sign videos, more Jupiter in the signs videos, and keep in mind that every second Thursday, I'm going to be doing a cold reading, a live cold reading that I can share with everybody. So you can come in, put in your date of birth, and if you get picked, you might be able to hear a little bit about your astrology chart from me live. Thank you, Mazal Tawab. Thank you, my friend Drawing Momentum. And of course, Mazal is asking to do Mula Nakshatra. I believe Mula Nakshatra, let's see, that's going to be coming up soon, my friend. After Chitra, we're going to go through Svati. Svati is the next nakshatra in line. Then we have Vishaka. Then we have Anuradha. Then we have Jesta. And then we have Mula. So we've got quite a few to go through before we get to Mula, Mazal. But we are getting there. I plan to go through all the nakshatras in the typical way that they're put out, in their chronological order. So we are getting there. Now, thank you again to everybody who is hanging out here, to Andrea for the sweet little tip that you gave, to Toxica for watching, Grounded Extract, Zem was here with us, West Pole, The Thick Boy, Marcella, and everybody who's been hanging out with us. I'm Dustin Cormier. I'll see you guys again. Keep your eyes on the skies. I'll see you guys again soon.